Maybe don't know.
This time. This time to build. 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 This time power. This time to build power. This time to build power. This time to build power.
What's up, everybody? I am your host, Chris Hampton. Welcome to episode 58 of the Power Company Podcast, brought to you by PowerCompanyClimbing.com. As always, hopefully you guys are visiting over there. I am currently visiting in Jasper, Arkansas, where I'll be emceeing 24 hours of Horseshoe Hell again. I don't compete anymore because it's just too much for me to compete, MC. No way I can do it. It just destroys me. My voice is going to take a beating here because the after party gets a little excited, and I will be a little excited, and I'll be yelling on the microphone. So I'm going to get this thing out to you guys now, because if I don't, it's going to be a week before I can talk again. Anyway, here at the Horseshoe Canyon Ranch, it's a pretty special place. If you guys haven't been, you should definitely visit at some point. And they are currently looking to rebolt the ranch. And they've teamed up with the Beta Fund. And the ranch was going to do this all on their own, but the Beta Fund wanted to jump in and help and get help from the climbers. All total, the project's going to cost $30,000. You guys can donate, and then your donation will be matched by the Beta Fund, and you can do that at betafund.org/rebolthcr, or you can just Google Beta Fund Horseshoe Canyon Ranch, and you'll find a link to it. And you know, the ranch is private property, and you do have to pay to climb there, and I've seen the argument that if you have to pay to climb there, you shouldn't have to help, rebolt the place. But frankly, $10 to climb there is less than the cost of a day pass at a halfway decent gym. So, I think if you have the means to do it, I think it's something you should definitely look into. Keeping climbing safe and keeping climbing open for all of us should be a priority. So that was betafund.org/rebolthcr. Please go check that out. From here, I go to Rocktoberfest, so hopefully I see a bunch of you guys there. That's October 6th to October 8th in the Red River Gorge. If you haven't registered and you want a discount on your registration, you can do that at rrgcc.org/register. So, don't wait. Don't wait till you get there. It's going to cost you more money, and we're all poor climbers here, so go and register early. And we'll be in the red for a few weeks. Nate and I will. Blake and Paul will also be joining us on October 14th for a live board meeting at Land of the Arches Campground. So if you guys are interested in coming in, checking out the board meeting, checking out a recording, asking questions, please come and see us. And Nate and I will be around for a while and doing outdoor sessions while we're there. So if you're interested in getting some outdoor coaching, hit us up. I'm going to jump into this thing now because, it's been a while. We've been talking a lot about nebulous ideas, esoteric ideas, and I figured it was time to nerd out a little bit. So I sat down with Steve Maisch in Salt Lake City during Outdoor Retailer this year, and we nerded out about a couple of things. This is the first of two with Maisch, and you'll get another one fairly soon. But for this one, we sat down and we talked about Hangboard protocols. There are a lot of them out there, and we discussed what they do, what the shortcomings are, and where things can go wrong. All right.
Maybe don't know.
For most people, it's just climbing, and I think hanging just isn't necessary for a lot of people.
So we were just talking about how keeping the goal. You shouldn't only focus on hangboarding, and you should be climbing too. And now we're gonna just dig in hardcore to hangboarding. So everyone out there listening, don't go do this for the next 90% of your training time. Go climbing too. I'm just gonna go ahead and preface this with that. So there's a lot of different protocols for hanging. I mean, tons and tons of them, and they all do something slightly different, and there are always arguments about which is better, but in reality, they all work. They all just do different things. So better is going to depend on what your goal is, so let's dig into it. What do you think is the most popular hangboard protocol where people kind of get started? Would that be repeaters?
I think the 7-3 repeaters. I think that seems to be the one that I see people doing a lot. And it's good. I mean, one thing people seem to get concerned about is injuring a finger on the hangboard.
Right.
So they're like, oh, if I do 7-3 repeaters, I'm not adding weight, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm of the opinion that the hangboard is probably the safest thing you can possibly do.
It's a hell of a lot safer than bouldering in the gym.
Exactly. Because you just you set up, you get everything. You're not going to pop a foot when you're in some weird position, and you get your fingers just right the way you want them, and then you slowly pull your feet off the ground.
Yeah, totally. I'm with you there for sure.
So I think that is that you don't need to worry about injuring yourself so much on the hangboard.
Yeah, in fact, we use it for people coming off of injuries. Slowly build them up on the hangboard, just because it's easier to control, easier to measure.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I think I think that idea, we don't need to worry about getting hurt so much on the hangboard. So I wouldn't say that would be the benefit of so much the 7-3 repeater zone. One thing that I like about the 7-3 repeater zone is from our assessment, it turns out that a 7-second hang correlates well with a single rep. So what you can then start applying is the 7-3 protocol using different established weight, rep, and percentage structures.
Right.
So like a Wendler's 5-3-1, or like a Bompa, some sort of protocol, like whatever, 80%, do 5 reps, 3 sets. It works quite well, the 7-3 part, in that the numbers correlate pretty well with that. So I like that about it. I also like the 7 seconds because I've looked at a lot of just video analysis, and it ends up being, 6 to 8 seconds is about the time you spend on a hold. Now, if you go to some places,
you obviously weren't watching me climb then.
The amount of time you should spend on a hold. So, but I mean, speaking of that, like when you go to, we went to Font last year, and there are problems there where you're on the hold for like 23 seconds.
Sure.
It's crazy.
So body position intensive.
You're just kind of bumping around and slowly working your way up. But 6 seconds seems like a pretty decent time frame. And then I like the fact that you can set it up. The reps work nicely with different protocols that you might find that have been shown to work for various weightlifting, aspects.
Right.
I also like the fact that with one of the big issues that I've found with hangboarding and adding weight and all that is that people, particularly with the half crimp grip, people lose the grip in the middle of the hang. So that index finger straightens out, and suddenly you're basically draping this hold, which is not going to do you much good when it comes time to move off of the hold and pull it down to your waist, and your fingers are straight. So the 7-3, since the weights tend to be lower, and even if you're adding weight, like I add a bunch of weight, but you get at least a few reps where your fingers are really holding that half crimp well. Even if you blow it on the last rep, you still get, say, 4 to 5 reps of good half crimp, which then transfers better to the full crimp. But I've said something, and I remember seeing this for isometric training where it trains roughly 20 degrees in either direction.
Right.
And that was my argument for why you should do the half crimp grip,
right?
Because you're going to get slopers and you're going to get full crimp. It turns out, talking to people and myself included, you don't. So like when you train the half crimp grip, you're probably going to get stronger on slopers, but the full crimp is a different ballgame.
Yeah, I agree.
It just does not work. So I've got a lot of people that like say, oh man, I got my half crimps up. They're great, but my full crimps really suffered. Yep. And they come back, like they come on. Like if you go climbing for a month, your full crimps are going to come on, and they're going to be stronger than they were before.
Yep. But
there's definitely that suffering, that period where it's like, wow, my fingers felt really strong on the hangboard, but they're not crimping. So the 7.3, one, it allows you to maintain the full crimp better, but also I do full crimps with the 7.3. And I think that the repeater aspect of it works really well instead of just piling up a bunch of weight and trying to full crimp something.
Now these repeaters have also kind of become popular with doing these really, really long hangboard workouts where you're doing, 6 or 7 different grips and, 5 sets on each, and just these hour-long hangboard marathons. Is that something that you also do? Are they shorter workouts? When you're using the 7.3 repeaters, because I don't use them much, so I'm curious how you go about using them.
Yeah, so I do shorter workouts. So I go with 3 grips. For me, it's half crimp, full crimp, and then the pinch block. But I actually put the pinch block on a lat pull down machine.
Right.
I think it works a lot better.
Yep.
And I do 3 sets. So I basically, it'll either be after climbing or now I'm kind of time crunched. So I'll actually just do the hangboard workout. Mm-hmm. Speaking of the 75 bit, but it's a time issue. It's a time issue in this case. So I'll just roll in and just warm up on the hangboard.
Yep.
And do a bunch of sets. But if I normally would do it, if I had a little more time right now, I'd do my climbing and then hang at the end of the day. So what I would do is I do half crimp, full crimp, pinch block. The first one of, say, the half crimp is just a body weight set of 5 reps. The second one is getting close to where my third one's going to be my max. Mm-hmm. So then I'll add weight to get about halfway between the body weight and what my third one's going to be, which is about 85. I've been working like 80 to 85% of my max. So then that second one is heavy, but not that heavy. And then my third one, I go as heavy as I can, which is about 85% for me right now, 80 to 85% of my 1 rep max, and try to get 5 sets and just keep going until I fail. So I usually get it's like 5.5 sets. Right, so I'm shooting for 5. And then I move to the full crimps and do the same thing with the full crimps.
So you do go all the way until you fail.
On that last one, on the very last one. So I get 2. So for a half crimps, I'll get 2 where I'm not failing and it's good. And then that last one of each one of my 3, I do go to failure.
Okay, cool. I had the best, kind of my breakout sport climbing season after doing largely just hangboarding, a little bit of hard bouldering on a really tiny little wall in this guy's basement, and then just largely hangboarding. And part of it was that I was a trad climber before. My finger strength was piss poor at best, so I had a lot to gain in that department. Yeah. But I definitely did hangs to failure. Not like every hang to failure, but I would do sets of quite a few hangs until I eventually failed, and then I would move on to another, Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, I definitely agree in some cases with this whole trend of not failing while you train. Again, I'm harping on this, but sometimes I think it's important. Yeah. And, to know where you're at and be mentally prepared to go to that end.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the benefits of, say, the 7.3 repeater, because even if you're going to failure, you're going to failure in reps. So say I fail at 5.5 reps, that still means I got 4 reps where I was in pretty good control. So I was really working in that sub-maximal zone. So I'm kind of commanding the hold. And then that 5th rep, I might have started to shake a little bit. Right. so those 4 reps where I'm really doing well, I see those as my strength building reps.
Yep.
And that last 1.5 is my recruitment rep, is just kind of getting whatever I got left.
Mm-hmm.
So I think most of that workout is spent in that strength zone.
Sure.
Because the first 2 sets are definitely in the strength zone, because they're not going to failure, and it's not even max weights. And then that last one, you do kind of go big.
Okay. And then probably the second most popular one is going to be like the Ava Lopez protocol, the 10 seconds on, 3 minutes off.
Yeah.
Sort of start with 3 sets and then build up to 5 sets over time or whatever. Have you used this one at all?
Oh yeah. That was kind of my initial, that was my big one initially, was the one I did pretty much predominantly because of that Eva Lopez board. So it's like, or that Eva Lopez article. Because that was like the one case where I was like, oh, look, somebody did research on this.
Yeah.
And look, it turns out, I mean, N was whatever, 6 people or something like that. And it turns out that, hanging more weight from the larger edge seemed to work better for this group. And I was like, oh, okay, well, that's all we got. I might as well do that. Yeah. So I did the 10-second thing, and I've told a lot of people to do the 10-second thing, or suggest it. And it's worked for a lot of people, and a lot of people that have had, who are already coming into the game with really strong fingers and really good climbers.
Yep.
And that 10-second protocol works well and has improved both their climbing and their finger strength on the edge. The one thing that I've noticed, though, in recent times is that it tends to lead to a plateau.
Yep.
So like,
did for me for sure.
Yeah. So like, you kind of, the way it seems to work out for me with hangboarding in general is I'll come into it, I'll be going climbing or whatever, then I'll hit my training block and I'll come into it, I'll get all my numbers for the hangboard, and then the next couple of hangboard workouts I'm actually worse. So I just kill myself on that first day, then I'm worse for a couple workouts. Then I start to slowly ramp up each workout, and by about 6 to 9 workouts, I've hit my plateau.
Yeah.
And I'm basically back to where was the case with the 10-second ones. I ended up basically back to where I was the previous training cycle, and I was like, well, I just keep getting up to this level, and then my fingers feel pretty strong, but I'm not breaking through. And I think one of the problems with that 10-second one is, again, this idea of recruitment, where because you're operating at such a high intensity level, it's like full on, it's as much as you can hang for 10 seconds.
Right.
That there's no real strength building. It's just like doing like a snatch, like a heavy snatch. Like you just go out and try to do the heaviest snatch you can do.
That's interesting.
That's
so you see it more like performance, like a test.
Yeah.
Less like you're building strength.
Exactly. I think it becomes like you're just performing rep after, like day after day on the hangboard. And I don't think you can really build in the long term. I don't think the strength is going to work. I think it works really well in the short term because, like you said, anything's going to work well in the short term.
Right.
And I also think it could work well incorporated in with some of the other hang protocols that we can chat about. But one of the things that I find with the 10-second thing that works really well is, because of this recruitment aspect, is doing the 10-second hang and then immediately going to a campus board and doing doubles, up downs.
Right.
And I think that is sort of
compound or complex training.
Complex training, yeah. And I think that's kind of, I like to think of that as sort of the topper, like right before you go to that trip on to Waco. Mm-hmm. If you can get 3 or 4 workouts in of 10-second hangs with the doubles, that just like gets your whole body firing. But if you train that way the other 50 weeks of the year, you're just going to hit a plateau and you're just not going to get any stronger.
Sure. Yeah. And that's, I will say this, just qualify that complex training definitely isn't for everybody.
No. Yeah.
If you're V4, V5 climber, it's probably not what you need to be doing.
Right.
And you've got better ways to get more powerful.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
and I think, with a lot of this stuff, I mean, for most people, like it's just climbing. And I think, to say, I know this one is about hangboarding, but hanging just isn't necessary for a lot of people.
Sure.
I think what's more important, if you're that V4 climber, what you need to work on is you need to work on your boulder pyramid. Like you need to be saying, okay, I can climb a V4. Yeah, but have I done 8 V3s?
Right.
So you go out and you got to try to do 8 V3s before you can go on to a V5. You know? So I'm a firm believer in, so just sort of throw that out there at the beginning.
Yep.
And that holds all the way up to V15. Like you want to get that pyramid going, but it's even more important when you're just starting out.
Yep. Actually, that's another reason I like these Ava Lopez hangs, is because when I have a climber whose main need is to go out and climb more, but they're like, well, I need hangboarding. I want hangboarding.
Yeah.
Why isn't hangboarding in my program? And they're just not going to be happy until they have it. These are great to work into, like Steve's integrated strength plans, and they don't take up a ton of extra time or a ton of energy. And the things that they're generally climbing on aren't taxing their fingers, or they don't need their fingers to be super fresh for it. So these aren't going to hurt their going out and doing submaximal climbing and more of it.
Yeah. Totally. I think that's a great point with these 10-second things, because it's pretty easy to figure out what the weight's going to be, what the edge is going to be.
Yep.
It does improve. I mean, it's one, the research shows, but also I've personally had big gains with them.
Same here.
So the 10 seconds works really well, and they work really well with other, combining your lifts, like the integrated strength thing with Steve. Built working that in, it's just so easy to do your 10 seconds, and on your 3 or 4 minute rest, you go do your deadlifts.
Yep.
And you come back and do your 10 seconds.
Yeah, I really like them for that reason, for sure. Other protocols, what else is out there?
So the lattice guys are big on the 5-second one arm hangs. And this is definitely not for, you want to be able to hang from one arm.
And actually, I'll go ahead and say this. One of my clients, Van, turned me on to this Ido Portal one-arm hang protocol, that all these steps leading up to being able to do advanced one-arm hanging work.
Yeah.
And it's really great. It just makes sure that your shoulders and everything are ready to do these one-arm hangs. And because, frankly, the one-arm hang can be pretty dangerous if you just jump into it and, think that you're going to be fine.
Yeah.
It's definitely something that should be worked into. And there's really no reason for anyone under the, V8 level probably to be doing them, in my opinion. I may not know what the reason is, so maybe there is, but
I would agree. I don't think there's, I think it's an upper, whatever the V grade would be, it would be upper end, and it's definitely, it runs the risk of, I tweaked my pec doing them last, just last year. I was classic. I just was like, oh, I'm going to see how much I can hang from one arm after not doing them for like 2 months.
Yep.
And I'm just like piling weight on, and I was like, oh, my pec hurts now. So it was like 2 months of pain.
Yeah, and you should definitely have a hangboard training age built up. Like you should have spent quite a bit of time on the hangboard already before you're doing one arm hangs on an edge.
Yeah. But there's a few, like, I do think there's some good and some bad with the one arms. The first thing is well, actually, one way to advance your way up to a smaller edge for one arms is you want to start with an edge that you can actually hang body weight from. So if if it feels like a jug, when you work the one arms, you're working most of your cross body.
Yeah, that whole stabilizing structure has to be in place.
Yeah, so it's like you're hanging with that one arm, but as you get better at them, you realize, you do the thing where you make a fist with your other arm to try to tense across your body.
Irradiation.
Yeah, and you learn how to really recruit your whole body to hang from this one arm, which is particularly beneficial with bouldering because a lot of time, you end up in some position where you might not be dangling one arm, but you have a lot of your weight on that one arm, and you got to somehow pull through.
Totally.
So I think the one arms are really good for that sort of cross-body recruitment. And the way to get up to a smaller edge, like an 18 mil edge, is to start on a bigger edge and work your way down instead of what I see a lot of people doing is taking weight off on the lower edge. And what that does is it doesn't get you that cross-body recruitment because you're pulling down on this rope and you're missing that. And it just doesn't seem... It didn't work for me. I didn't find I didn't start making gains on the one arms until I went to a slightly bigger edge that I could body weight hang from. So I think that's the way to do it, but it's really good for that cross body recruitment. And it should be incorporated into with the other hangs. The one thing that I find that's problematic with the one arms though is again the half crimp grip. Like
it's hard to keep that.
It's hard to keep it. And if you're I don't know if you saw the Facebook of Danny Woods hanging 10 seconds with 45 pounds weight, and he's just locked in on a half crimp. He's just crushing it.
Right.
And if you're D Woods, okay, you can do it.
Yep.
Right. But for the other, whatever 6 billion people out there, most of us are going to lose that half crimp.
Yep.
And then it becomes more of just this radiation cross-body recruitment training. And you end up training that sort of drag grip, which isn't going to help you when it comes time to push something down below your chest.
Right.
So that's where I see the fault of the one-arm hangs for most of us, which I think they're really useful if combined either with outside climbing where you're actually crimping a lot and climbing on small holds, or something like moonboarding where you're holding on to your force to kind of maintain that crimp. You need to be doing something that's hitting your half crimps and your full crimps while you're doing the
I agree. That's the hardest part of one arms for me is keeping the half crimp.
Yeah.
Once I start to melt into an open hand, I'm just over. There's no reason for me to keep hanging and risk my shoulder and everything else, And I like the beta for going up to a bigger hold, bigger edge. And I hadn't thought about the fact that the big problem with grabbing something or, taking weight off or whatever is that you do lose a lot of that tension that you have to keep to hold a one-arm hang.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I noticed it kind of accidentally with my last year with my training for my performing on the hangboard. I was trying to hang that 18 mil edge and I had to take 15 pounds off. And for weeks and weeks and weeks, I was not making any progress at all. And then one day I noticed on the other side of the board, they've got one of the other beast makers and it has a slightly bigger edge in the middle. And I kind of pulled up and I was like, whoa, I can hang that with one arm. Why don't I just use this one? And then I started training on that one and it was literally every workout was adding 2 pounds. And then I went back to the 18 mil and just was crushing it. It was sort of an accident of fortuitous accident sort of thing.
Yeah, and I've noticed, and now that you say it that way, I think back, and there are times when I'm doing one-arm hangs where not even pulling down on anything, but just putting my hand against a wall. Yeah. I can hang for considerably longer if I put my hand against something.
Yeah.
Just to keep me from rotating. Yeah. And all I'm doing really is getting rid of all that tension that I had to keep to stop myself from rotating around my shoulder.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's really good beta that I hadn't really thought about which way would be better to progress.
Yeah.
So cool. And then when doing these one-arm hangs, should we be shooting for 5 seconds, do you think? Should we be shooting for longer time than 5 seconds or more weight at 5 seconds?
I think more weight at 5 seconds. And again, that's sort of one of the problems where, it's rarely the case that you're only going to be on a hold for 5 seconds.
Right.
Most of the time you're on and you don't want to be really strong on a hold for 5 seconds.
The only time I'm on hold for 5 seconds is if I fall off.
so yeah, if you, and you don't want to be okay, I'm, at second 6, I just fall off the wall.
Right.
So that's kind of a negative effect of the 5-second thing. But I've tried them with 10 seconds and 7 seconds. And the problem, 7 isn't so bad, but 10, it's just hell on your shoulder.
Yeah.
And bicep.
I would
and
think
like,
so,
it's
yeah.
just, you just start spinning around and you're just like, it's just too much on the structure. 7 is okay. But I would, 5 is just kind of the standard. I think, 5 to 7 was what I would say.
And then what about how much you're pulling up? Do you think it matters? I see some people almost in a full lock off when they're doing these things.
Yeah. So you're going to be stronger pulling up. So when you bend your arm, you start getting that cross body radiation. You start bringing in your lats into holding onto the hold. I just think wherever you can hang the most weight from.
You're still hanging on your fingers.
You're still hanging on your fingers. Yeah.
Yeah.
It'd be, I mean, sometimes you see people just dangling and it's like, oh, okay, but, whatever.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. What else is out there? I mean, I know we do some different things. We do a lot of 10-second on, 10-second off, more for the sake of just fitting them into sessions better.
Right.
So I don't know. I don't know what else is out there.
And there are a few, like I've seen Steve has that one that's like 3 seconds, 6 seconds, 9-second ladder.
Yep. Have you tried those at all?
I have not tried those. I do know a few people that have been doing them and they seem to like them.
Yeah, I haven't tried them either.
Yeah. My one complaint would be with that 3-second one. Like you're never on hold. I mean, if you're never on hold for 5 seconds, you're definitely never on one for 3 seconds.
Sure.
And I think the idea is the warm-up aspect of it. But I would say, I think a better protocol would be something like, 7 seconds and then just increase the weight. So instead of going 3, 6, 9, having 9 be your max, do all 3 of them at 7 seconds or 10 seconds and increase the weight so that your third one is where you have the most weight.
Right. Yep. I see the weight thing is tough for a lot of people. I think that especially people who have hangboards at their house don't have weight to add, or, if they're working professionals or whatever, whose husband is like, you're not keeping weights laying around the living room just so you can hangboard, So I think that's a concern too that people run into. I think what it comes down to, no matter what the protocol is if it's working for you and you're getting stronger, then great. Yeah. Do it until you're not getting stronger that way anymore.
Yeah. And I think that's where all 3 of these kind of have their place in an extended training program. You can do your strength building with your 7-3 repeaters. And then as you're getting closer to your trip, you hit the 10-second complex training. And then maybe somewhere in there, you do a few weeks of the 1 arms to try to get that going. And then you go back to your 7-3s. So you're avoiding that plateau on the hangboard, which is kind of like, it's like the campus board. Like you do whatever you can do in your ladders and you never get any
Exactly.
better.
Yeah. You're just stuck there
You're
forever.
just stuck there forever.
Yeah.
And, the same is true with the hangboard if you just keep doing the same thing.
Have you ever tested, I'm curious, after doing a round of repeaters, a whole cycle of repeaters, have you then tested your max hang strength to see if it changed based on the repeaters?
Yes, I have. And I've been mostly doing these repeaters just kind of recently. This past, I sort of fell into them this spring. Has been really with this assessment and kind of seeing how all that's fitting together.
Yeah, they've always seemed to me like they lean a little more towards strength endurance than pure strength. So I'm just curious.
And that's So my tests haven't had enough time. I mean, after I do this one, I've got this sort of protocol that I'm doing with this 5-3-1 business. I'm going to do my next test and we'll see if it does.
Cool.
Yeah. So I'm not totally sure about it, but I do think when we think about the strength endurance versus the strength component, we were just chatting with Justin about this. I still think if you're in that 5 rep range with the 7.3s, you're still really working strength, because I'm starting to kind of get away from the idea of trying to, I mean, in one sense, try to correlate hangs, the isometric contraction, with a
like a
concentric,
weightlifting
eccentric
type
weightlifting type movement.
Yep.
But the difference between a 7-second hang and a 1 rep max in terms of time is large. So, you do a 1 rep bench press and you're like 3 to 4 seconds in there.
Right.
So then the question becomes, do we say a 3-second hang is a 1 rep max?
Right.
And
gotcha. Yeah.
so some people would say, yes, it is. And I would say, I think it's a totally different thing. I think we find a hang time that correlates well with people's reps on a normal weightlifting move, and then just call that the 1 rep max. And that happens to be 7 seconds.
Yep. You like 7 seconds.
Yeah. Is what the data is showing. So going from, I think then 5 reps would be like doing 5 reps of the bench press. So you're still in your strength zone, even though it's taking whatever that is, 50 seconds to do it.
Yep. Yeah, I see exactly what you're saying. And I think I agree. I think that doing 5 reps at 7.3 does sound like more strength to me than strength endurance. I think where my brain started to go, that's more strength endurance, was these really long repeater workouts.
Yeah.
That I've seen quite a bit of.
Yeah.
And those I don't view as strength workouts.
Right.
I think they have to be done at such a sub-max load, somewhere below 80%.
Yeah.
To be able to complete the workout, that they can't be true strength.
Right.
So,
yeah, and I would agree with that. And I mean, just the one I'm doing now is it actually alternates. So week 1, you do 5 reps. Week 2, you do 3 reps. Week 3, you do 5, 3, 1. So you're working your way down.
Yep.
And that last 1 rep is going to be a 7-second. That'll be my test. I'll be like, oh, do I do more, et cetera.
Yep.
So
Cool.
that's even actually reducing it even more as far as number of reps go.
Yeah, cool. Do you hangboard year-round or through all of your training cycles? Do you stop during your performance phases?
I stopped during my performance phases, and I'm questioning that. I'm wondering if that should be the case. Hanging does kind of zap me, but I also find that I lose so much when I do a round of hangs and then go climbing for a month or 2 and come back to my hangs, 20-30% weaker on the hangs. And it's like, well, how was that affecting my climbing? Like, I lost that. As I was getting more used to climbing on the rock, my fingers were getting weaker.
Right. And that's even mostly bouldering, right?
Yeah, mostly bouldering.
Okay.
I mean, I've been, the past year's been mostly bouldering. Prior to that I did a year of sport climbing for a little while there. I've done both. So.
Yeah. I mean, when I have sport climbers, because most of the people I started with training were in the red, and I know it's a pretty specific type of climbing there, but I definitely had people hang during the performance season, specifically the weekend warriors. I would have them doing max strength hangs of some type during the week before they went out and just did long pumpy pitches all weekend.
Oh yeah.
And I think that works pretty well in that situation.
Yeah, I think that would work really well in that situation. So that, I'm thinking so being out here in Salt Lake, it's like, I can climb pretty much year round all week long.
Yep. Same in Lander now where I'm at. Yeah.
So it's like when I think of a performance cycle, like I'm climbing outside, Saturday, Sunday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Sunday. So that's where like the hanging might get might start impacting the red pointing.
Yep.
But I'm also thinking like, this past fall in Little Cottonwood, I started just hanging. I would do 3 sets of 7.3s, just kind of like 5 reps, just basically a body weight when I got home from climbing at Little Cottonwood.
Yep.
And it felt okay. Like it wasn't hurting my climbing, and it felt like it was kind of maintaining a little bit of that. So that might be something I might move toward. But yeah, generally I haven't been hanging during the season, but I think that might be kind of a mistake.
Yep. Yeah. It'd be interesting to see.
Yeah.
Do you subscribe to pocket hangs?
I do. Yeah. Cause I'm weak as hell on pockets.
Do you do those in a half crimp as well,
No,
or
open.
stay open-handed
Yeah.
with those?
Yeah. Okay. And I think that's the other thing. Like you pick your 3 grips, and if you're hanging year round, you work on your grips until you don't have, a weak one. So maybe one cycle you'll do half crimp, full crimp, pinch block. The next cycle you'll do half crimp, full crimp, middle 2. Then the next cycle you might toss in slopers, or you might go front 3 or back 3 or mono or whatever. Like you can kind of keep inserting 1 or 2 grips that you want to work on with the hangboard. And if you're just kind of constantly doing it year round to keep those up. Yep. So right now, like most of the stuff I want to do this fall it's not a pocket in sight. So I'm like, I'm not going to.
Yep. That's
worry.
all that's in sight for the things that I'm looking at. The pinch blocks, I think, are interesting. I've not seen much transfer from pinch blocks to actual climbing, but a lot of that, again, was looking at the red, where most everything is a horizontal edge that's fairly big that people are pulling on. Yeah. So what have you seen with the pinch blocks? And pinches were probably my strongest grip, right? Just naturally. So I never got a ton out of pinch blocks, where I did get a ton out of hanging on edges. Yeah. So I think again that it points to where your weakness is. If you're already strong on something, you're probably not going to get a lot out of bumping that one up. But also it depends where you're climbing. So if you're like at the red or at Iris or Sinks, or like you're not doing a whole lot of pinching there. Right. Whereas you go to Fontainebleau and you're pinching a lot, or you go to some of these kind of tufa zones and you do a lot of pinching. I've noticed that the pinches do, like in Little Cottonwood, we got a lot of pinchy stuff. I think the pinch blocks do help with my pinch strength, and I'm naturally strong on pinches as well. Like that's kind of my strong grip. And if I can get those up pretty well, then I feel even stronger on the pinches. Yeah, and I kind of like them. And if you watch. And you've switched to doing yours hanging now instead of, or you use a lat pull down machine. I use the lat pull down machine instead of the pinch block deadlifts. Yeah, and a few things I've noticed. So on my new ones that I just made, I actually offset the eye bolt so that it's not in the dead middle. And what it does, I mean, you can't see. I'm just sitting here doing this with my hand. what it does, it actually cocks your wrist. The way the weight pulls on your wrist, it forces your hand into a more climbing specific pinch position. So if you watch someone just sort of doing the deadlift with the pinches, you'll see that their thumb and index finger move up toward their wrist as the weight gets heavier. And when you're pinching outside, you're never in that position. Right. Your wrist is always going the other direction, where your pinky's going toward your wrist on the other side. And if you offset the eye bolt a little bit toward the top where your index finger is, and if you do it on a lat pull down machine or even a cable row machine, you get a much more realistic actual climbing move pinch. Gotcha. Yeah. So, cool. I'll have to play around with that. Yeah. It's kind of, you'll sort of notice it as your hand is like, oh, this feels a little bit more like real climbing. Mm-hmm. Have you played around at all with the no hang stuff? The other one that I got pinch blocks and crimp, all this stuff, all the toys. So I made one that's just it's a 2x4 with 2 little 12 mil or whatever, 1/4 inch, 3/8 or something edges on the side of it, and I attach that one to the cable row machine. Are you doing rows with? And I do rows with crimp on each side. With the crimp, yeah. Well, I pull it into crimp. I don't bother with the row, so I pull. Just do the fingers. I just pull it into a crimp. So like those finger curls that you. It's like a finger curl. Exactly. Yeah. So it's like the finger curl. Explode my fingers. Yeah, which you don't want to do at body weight, but if you're on the cable row machine or the lat pull down, you put it at whatever 50, 60 pounds, and you can do a nice controlled. You're not like dynoing right
into the crimp, you do a really nice controlled finger curl. And for those, I've been doing like super high reps, like trying to do like, I do 2 minutes on, 1 minute off, 1 minute on, 1 minute off, 1 minute on, 1 minute off.
right
Just to,
now you're going to go to the red, and every hold you grab, you're going to pull it into a full crimp for
Exactly.
entire routes. Yeah.
yeah, that's the plan.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I hadn't thought of doing those finger curls that way.
Yeah. And it feels really climbing, like it feels like I'm actually pulling into a crimp on a route.
Right.
And you can just adjust the weight to whatever, from 10 pounds to whatever they go to.
Have you used any just for heavy hangs?
So I have not personally, but I've talked to some people who were doing that, and it turns out that it's actually really bad for your shoulders. The way the positioning is, so he was doing heavy, like 10-second hangs, but with the deadlift, just pulling it off the ground. And he said he got this really bad bicep tendonitis thing going, and he went and saw a PT friend of his, and the guy was like, oh yeah, it's because of the way, there's something about the way we're designed to hold on to a hold. It's totally not what you're doing when you're doing a deadlift with this little pinch grip thing in between. Like your shoulders are kind of compressing in, and it's putting all this undue stress on the top of your bicep somehow.
Yeah. Was he doing it with something similar to what you were talking about?
Yeah, he was doing basically the exact. He's got both hands on it.
Oh, okay.
So it's like a pinch block with 2 edges on the sides, and then he was just dead. I forget exactly. I think he had he had some injury that he couldn't hang.
Yeah.
So he's like, "Oh, I'm going to do the deadlift."
That makes sense if you have your that would be your arms.
What is it? Pronated?
Externally rotated, I guess.
Well, they'd be internal. You'd be like that.
Right. So you've got them slightly externally rotated and together.
Yeah, and
so
then
your
together.
shoulders
That's
are kind
what it
of
is. Yeah.
in the front. It's
Yeah.
going to be hard to pull your shoulders back in that position.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think if you go heavy, that's putting a lot of undue stress on the bicep. Whereas what I'm doing is pretty light.
Right. Sure.
So my like I'm not getting pumped at all on my back or my biceps. It's all just forearms.
Yeah. I haven't played with any of the like the gripple or any of those things yet. I did just recently when I injured my hand at the skate park, and I had been training my monos leading up to that, but I couldn't hang with my right hand on a mono anymore. And I just happened to be down in Boulder, and I interviewed Will Anglin and Ben Spaneth from Tension. And Will had just a single mono that I could use to I just attach a kettlebell to it, and I kept training my left hand because that's the one I'm most concerned about anyway, because the route I want to do has a ring finger mono for my left hand. Yeah. So I was able to use that, and I really like it. I hadn't played around with any of these little toys like that, but so far I really like it. And Nate is doing something interesting where he's just doing isometric holds on, like he takes the flashboard, the tension flashboard, that portable hangboard.
Yeah.
And he basically takes a tie down strap, and those last couple inches of his deadlift are where it resists him. And he just does an isometric hold in a deadlift for those last couple inches, just on a regular sized portable hangboard. Yeah. And he's just playing around with them, but so far he likes them. So
interesting. Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, I did I saw this thing that the tension guys have, and I just made one at one point.
Yeah.
For the monos, and I was using them for one thing I played around with a little bit was super long duration hangs, like 3 minutes. Mm-hmm. And I tried doing it from a hangboard, and it just destroyed my shoulders. Just hanging there for
3 minutes. Yeah.
So then I switched to these little. Then I was like, oh, pinch blocks could work well for that. But then I also, since I'm weak on pockets, I was like, oh, I'll just do one finger.
Yep.
And you're just standing in a pretty comfortable position. And I don't know if it really worked at all. It was painful.
Yeah, and I think I might like it a little better than taking weight off on a hangboard. Yeah. Like if you want to work on your monos, but you can't hang on a mono, if you can't hang body weight, how the hell do you train those without taking weight off?
Exactly, yeah.
I think I think that's a good way. But I haven't played with crimps, the little like crimp edges that you hang weight off of and just hold in one hand. I haven't played with those. So
yeah, and I think even with the mono things that the tension guys have, like if you attach that to a lat pull down machine.
Yep.
Or even what I just in my garage, I have like a pulley, and you just set the pulley up over the rafter and
put weight on the other side. Yep.
And then you're kind of doing like an actual climbing move with your mono.
Yep.
And you can put whatever weight on it.
Yeah. Cool. Any other tricks and hangboard things that we haven't talked about? I mean, I'm sure there's a million tricks and toys out there. How do you feel about the portable hangboards that you warm up with at the crag?
I like them. Yeah.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah, I think they're really, I think they're great. I mean, you can save your skin. A lot of times I find with boulder, like to get the fingers actually warmed up, I have to either try something hard, which is going to zap my skin.
Yep.
Or just, those porta boards are really good for that. And sometimes, it depends. Like you were just in Waco, you got a ton of stuff to do.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Whereas, some of these places, like a place like South Africa, their stuff is kind of spread out, and you'll go to a place where there's only just that one boulder, and the next boulder is, a 15-minute walk away. In areas like that, they're really useful.
Yep. The final season I spent in the red, I was trying to just clean up the bouldery stuff I hadn't done. And it was super helpful for me there because I could, I was going to need to full crimp. I was going to need to try hard right at the bottom of a route. And I couldn't warm up on the 512s next to it because they're all giant holds.
Yeah.
So I could get my body warm, but my fingers weren't even close.
Right.
So being able to hang on that flashboard before I got on and get to the point where I felt comfortable pulling into a full crimp, then I was ready to go.
Yeah. So, yeah. And I think that's, I noticed that just with the hangboard, like my first set is never very good. Even my second set is not that good. It's my third. So it takes me like 3 sets to hit it. So if you're on a route and you waste that first go and then the second go, and third go, your fingers are finally warmed up, but the rest of you is destroyed.
Totally. All right, one last question. Maybe I might think of something else, but there are these big battles all the time, and I don't watch the Reddit subreddit training for climbing thing, but Nate does. Okay. And so I hear all the feedback of what's going on there, and there are all these battles about which is better, the 7-second hang or the 10-second hang or the 5-second hang or whatever. And I know you like 7 seconds.
Well, I think I'm on Reddit saying 10 seconds. So.
Oh, really?
That's right.
How much difference do you think there really is between the 5 versus 7 versus 10 or whatever?
I don't think it's so much the time. I think it's the protocol. So
and
like
the total
5
time
second
under tension.
Yeah, so the 5 second I think is a good one arm protocol.
Yep.
The 10 second I think is a really good recruitment protocol where your recruitment plus that complex, because we tend to it's that last couple of seconds where your body is just starting to fire all those extra fibers. But I also think it leads to a plateau. And I think the 7-3 repeater is a good protocol because it allows you to use grips that are more climbing specific, and it allows you to work in a weight you get a couple of sets in that are sub-maximal, so you're working in that strength zone.
Yeah.
So that would be my political answer that none of
There you have it, Reddit. from the lips of Steve Maisch. So, man, I appreciate it again. Sitting down. Let's do this again in the future.
Yeah, sure.
Like we could sit here and talk all damn night probably. Yeah. So, yeah, I appreciate it, man. Thanks.
All right. Yeah.
So, is there one best way? No, there definitely is not one best way. It depends on your situation, your needs, your goals, your training age, so many things. And, do we need to be training finger strength year round? Sure. Does that mean we need to be hangboarding year round? Not necessarily. You can gain a lot of finger strength through bouldering, especially if you're not up in the upper V levels. If you're a V4 climber, you've got a lot of finger strength you can still get through just some focused bouldering. So don't get trapped into that I need to be hangboarding all the damn time theory. It's just not true. If you have limited time, hangboarding's a great option. But a lot of us have tons of time. So there are better ways. So I'm going to get back to Horseshoe Canyon Ranch over here, get ready to start destroying my voice this weekend at 24 Hours of Horseshoe Hell. Please go check out betafund.org/rebolthcr. And if you have the means to give some money to Rebolt the Canyon, please do that. The Beta Fund is matching donations up to $8,000, I believe. Also, if you're coming to Rocktoberfest and you've not yet registered, you can do so. You get a little bit of money off. That'll be super helpful for all of us poor climbers out there. rrgcc.org/register. Go do that now. I'll see you there. Come and find me. I'm the guy on the mic. And October 14th, if you're still going to be in the red, live board meeting at Land of the Arches. Evening time, probably a little bit after dark, we'll be getting started. So just come by when you're finished up climbing. Hope to see all of you guys out there. More podcasts coming soon, just as soon as my voice recovers. Don't forget to go check us out on the interwebs, powercompanyclimbing.com. We've got new journals out. We've got our Applied Body Tension ebook out. Tons of cool things coming down the pipeline right now. We just bought a house, so as soon as I get my gym built in there and get things going, you guys are going to get inundated with Power Company shit. It's going to be everywhere. So find us, powercompanyclimbing.com, Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest. For God's sakes, I still don't know what goes on at Pinterest. And no Twitters. You guys know that. We don't tweet. We scream like eagles.
It's time to build.